kind of both.
On that note, you want to move over to your should I call it a mea culpa on Lex?
I mean, I was wrong when I said that he doesn't have the pitch arsenal or the tools to ask good questions. I went and I watched some of the Tucker clips, and I was very impressed.
Should I cue up some of this?
Yeah. Now, do you have it in the spot where he talks about the?
I have it in a spot that you provided me.
Yeah, where Tucker's talking about like how clean the Moscow subway is, and Moscow is as a whole. And I thought that Lex came in off the fucking top rope with a ninja question, but then it went wrong from there.
For those of you who don't know, Tucker, I'd be shocked if you don't, but Tucker Carlson went to Moscow. He interviewed President Vladimir Putin, and then he shot a couple very controversial videos about Moscow, about how clean it was. They went to the supermarket. One of the Moscow supermarkets, there's got to be a bunch of supermarkets in Moscow. It's a giant city. So, we're going to hear a bit of it here.
Of our people, you don't need to put up with this. You don't need to put up with foreign invaders stealing from you, occupying your kids' school. Your kids can't get an education because people from foreign countries broke our laws and showed up here and they've taken over the school. That's not a feature of freedom, actually. That's the opposite. That's what enslavement looks like. And so I'm just saying, raise your expectations a little bit. You can have a clean, functional, safe country. Crime is totally optional. Crime is something our leaders decide to have or not have. It's not something that just appears organically. I wrote a book about crime 30 years ago. I've thought a lot about this. You have as much crime as you put up with, period. And it doesn't make you less free to not tolerate murder. In fact, it makes you unfree to have a lot of murders. And so but it makes me sad that people are like, well, I guess this is I can't live in New York City anymore because of inflation and filth and illegal aliens and people shooting each other. But, I'm glad because this is vibrant and strong and free. It's like, that's not freedom, actually, at all.
Your point is well taken. You can have both. But do you regret?
We had both. That's the point. We had, but I saw it.
Do you regret to a degree using the Moscow subway and the grocery store as a mechanism by which to make that point?
It's the real question that I thought was really admirable is further back where he says, where he says, yes, you're right. We don't have to trade freedom for cleanliness, but dictators will often, right around there, dictators will often brag about how clean their cities are.
Okay, we go back there.
Yeah.
So true that in dictatorships.
Back up just maybe 10 seconds.
And I think with younger people, you can tell them that, and they're like, "Well, 1985, you were, selling slaves in Madison Square Garden." It's like, no, they weren't. You're going to Madison Square Garden and not stepping over a single fentanyl addict.
It is true. There doesn't have to be a trade-off between cleanliness and freedom of speech. But it is also true that in dictatorships, cleanliness and architectural design is easier to achieve and perfect, and often is done so you can show off, look how great our cities are, while you're suppressing.
Of course.
What was amazing about that question?
I love that question so much. In fact, the next time I get to lead a workshop on interviewing, I'm gonna use this as an example. I think that is a fantastic rebuttal to what, or hey, well, listen, here's a little more perspective on what Tucker's doing. It completely fucking exposes every issue, my issue with Tucker. And it's funny we're talking about Jake Paul. To me, Tucker is like Don King or something. Tucker's like he is P.T. Barnum, like incarnate. He can't talk about issues honestly. He presents a bunch of amazing, salient facts. and then constructs them in a way where he's got that fucking top hat thing and he's got to turn it into a performance and shift the context. And here, Lex brings him back like, yo, actually, here's a little fucking context to cut through the smoke and mirrors shit you're trying to pull. The only issue I have is he doesn't keep his foot on Tucker's throat. And let's watch what happens here. Tucker does that thing that all experienced people who've been on mic a lot can do. They just start talking about whatever the fuck they want. He just takes what he's asked and goes wherever he wants with it and does that little shuck and jive thing. But it's an awesome question.
I agree with that vehemently. This is not a defense of the Russian system at all. And if I felt that way, I would not only move there, but I would announce I was moving there. I'm not ashamed of my views. I never have been.
Go at him, Lex. Come on, dude.
Trying to impute secret motives to my words. I'm like the one person in America you don't need to do that with. If you think I'm a racist, ask me, and I'll tell you.
Are you a racist?
Of course. No,
that was funny.
I am a sexist, though.
Great.
See, this is where Lex maybe is the parallel to these fighters who aren't trained boxers. You get in the ring with this motherfucker, you better have your A game on, because he's gonna pull this shit that he just did on Lex, and Lex let him get away with it. It's like no. Don't swerve 4 lanes over to kind of skate out of what I just put in front of you, which is that you're intentionally misrepresenting the context of what you saw to spin people's feelings about the USA. Now Tucker has a point. Like, yeah, our cities are in fucking serious decay. And why is that? And we need to interrogate that. But Lex was onto him, and then he let him get away with it. So that's my spin. What are you hearing?
I thought it was a good question. This is why I disagreed with you when you brought the point up. Not strictly because of this. I think I've seen Lex make that kind of, counter punch often. I think he's just a different kind of interviewer, and that's the point that I made on our last engagement on this.
Well, that was the point he made.
Yeah, I was agreeing.
That's the point he made. Yeah, I think he's a little too. I think his critics are right that he's a little too passive. He mistakes being accommodating and letting people feel comfortable with being passive, because Tucker just, dude, he could have knocked Tucker out right here. Not that that's what you're trying to do in an interview, but he had him on he could have delivered the knockout punch, and then Tucker just Tucker rope-a-doped him.
Should we go deeper into Tucker, or should we move on?
No, but I just want to acknowledge, I got to watch more of Lex's shit. He started off with a really, really good question too, which I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember being really impressed.
We could hear his first question.
I don't know if it's in it's in the other clip.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave it for now. We could always come back to Lex.
It'll be interesting to see where he develops, right? Like, he's created a space for himself. His podcast is successful. He has what I would consider to be A-list guests. I mean, in my world. And I'll be curious, because like you said, he doesn't need to do it. It's a passion project.
Yeah. And I wonder, because they actually spend a lot of time later in this interview talking about, because Lex has said for years how he has wanted to interview Putin even before this latest Ukraine encounter. And they spent a good amount of time talking about what to expect and with it. Also, Lex, who's I believe is from Ukraine, is a native Russian speaker. So they could have a full-on conversation. That's probably the most interesting element of that interview was Tucker talking about the mechanics of interviewing someone who speaks a different language than you, and the fact that you had someone in your ear who is translating it. They're good translators, but they're not perfect, because nobody's perfect, because English and Russian don't line up
Right.
perfectly. No two languages really do. And plus, there's a delay. And you're in a room with somebody and you're reacting to someone on a delay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that was a really fascinating element of what Tucker laid out in his talk with Lex.
I would love to see Lex Friedman do that interview. I would hope that somebody could get to him and teach him some stronger punches. I do like his, I'm not going to call it a tactic because I think it's just his personality. I think he could turn it into a tactic where you appear to be, I guess, somewhat passive or like you're not on the offensive and you let the person come to you and then start, like, let them almost trap themselves. Not that you're always in an antagonistic posture with an interview subject, but with someone like Putin, you do have to challenge this person, especially a world leader. They're going to expect some measure of deferring, but they do want to respect you. I think I've never interviewed a world leader, but I feel like somebody like that, they want you to go, oh, you're fucking clever, dude. Like, all right. Like, this is a bit of a chess match here. I don't think Lex has the killer instinct. Like, Tucker, to me, has the ego. Like, I would be nervous sitting in a room with Putin. I just would. There's like rock people, not so much. Like, but I would just be nervous. I don't think Tucker's fucking nervous. I think Tucker has a sense of like, I'll sit with anybody and my ego's solid enough. I think Lex would be sort of an accommodating presence, and where Putin would say things that he has to push back on. So I feel like you and I have to get to Lex basically before we have to train him, get him on a athletic bag before he goes to interview Putin.
Well, also, I mean, I think training is an interesting point to go on there in that Lex is new to this. Tucker has been working, if I remember correctly, he worked at newspapers, then magazines, then into TV, writing countless articles, and then going on the TV in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Leading up for about the 10 to 15 years before the Jon Stewart encounter. And then I think he had another 4 or 5 years on TV after that, then ran a news publication, a Daily Caller, and then went to Fox News where he was for the last decade. Like you're talking about one guy with reams and reams of experience.
Sure.
Not going to be nervous in any situation. And another guy who is, has this openly talked about on his show that he's shy and that he's learning on the job.
Well, and he also mistakes just having a chat with interviewing. And similarly to what we were talking about before, you can't get in the ring with someone who's trained their whole life, their whole career, and you're going to get your ass kicked. And he kind of did there. He kind of, like, in like 30 seconds, Tucker showed that he does that thing where he's like, oh, well, see, people say I'm a racist. And it's like, that had nothing to do with what the fuck you were just at. You're just being evasive. You're just like setting off fireworks, flashy, thick colors to deflect what you were just asked. He sensed he was being exposed. That's like, yeah, actually, I am misrepresenting the whole Moscow cleanliness thing to put a spin on it, to send my message. So I'm going to talk about racism and like,
I disagree with you on that one. I don't think he was necessarily purposely misrepresenting. I thought it was clumsy. I thought it wasn't precise. But I do think, as you mentioned earlier, it was sort of a critique of what has happened with American cities. And was it the best one? It seems like it was ham-fisted and just sort of, like impromptu. And also, I think that'll reflect in something we'll get in later. And one thing we've already talked about before about creating a sideshow. And
Mhm.
before we talked about creating your own juggalo camp, and part of that is living in hyperbole, living the gimmick, uh, making expanding something larger than it needs to be. And I think when you do that and you go out and you get something like $15 million of investment money and you create a thing and you want it going viral a few times, being the troll that, will piss people off is a way to do it. Now, is it a pure misrepresentation? I don't think it was, but I think an exaggeration for sure.
I think
That
it was a
I may be like pulling, there's a very thin line between those things. I totally concede that, but I'm not sure that was a purposeful thing.
well, because I think Tucker may believe his own bullshit.
Without a doubt.
He might be getting drunk off the sauce. And this is the thing. This is how insidious this is. I'm even experiencing this at the tiny level that I'm even in public, expression on YouTube. I've noticed certain things pop on YouTube Shorts, and you're not even aware to the degree that you're subliminally going to those things. Like, you can make a conscious decision, oh, that's going to pop on YouTube Shorts, but it's already coloring unconsciously my decision making to
Sure.
pander to it. You
Sure.
create this character. I don't think it's just money. I think these people, I've been saying this to you for like over a decade at this point. These people lose the boundary of where the character ends and they, or where they begin and the character, or they end and the character begins. And he was doing that. Tucker, he's doing like a typical Tucker guitar solo on there, right? He's like the same notes of same techniques. And that exposed why Tucker Carlson, I think, is not a good faith communicator. He's dishonest. You're right. I think exaggerating is a better way to put it. He was contextual. He was framing. That's the word.